First, what we're going to do is try to isolate our variable. So what I'm going to do here is add 80 and 7/10 to both sides. So here, if I have negative 61 and 1/10 plus 80 and 7/10, I have more positives. How many more positives do I have than negatives? Let's find the difference between these two. Here, 7 minus 1 is 6. I need to borrow. 10 minus 1 is 9. 7 minus 6 is 1. So I'm left with 19 and 6/10 equals n, because this is going to be 0. So that is my final answer. Next thing I'm going to have to do is plug it back into my original answer to see if it works. Notice all I did here is leave a space in for my variable, which was n. So I'm going to plug in my answer of 19 and 6/10. Here, this side is already simplified, so I'm just going to bring it straight down. I have more negatives than positives. I need to see how many more negatives I have than positives, so I'm going to find the difference between the two. Here, 7 minus 6 is 1. I need to borrow. 10 minus 9 is 1. 7 minus 1 is 6. So I'm left with negative 61 and 1/10. So here, I've clearly checked my work, and I am confident to say that my answer is 19 and 6/10 equals n. Now let's look at another example. Here, for example number 2, first things first, I'm going to try to isolate my variable as best as I can. So here, if I have negative 1/4 m, I'm going to do the inverse, which is division, which is dividing both sides by negative 1/4. Notice here, I can't do this off the top of my head. That's when I go to side work. I'm going to do 7/8 divided by negative 1/4, which is the same thing as 7/8 times the reciprocal, which is negative 4/1. Here I can cross cancel. 8 divided by 4 is 2. Negative 4 divided by negative 4 is negative 1, which is going to leave me with the negative 7/2. So I'm going to go ahead and replace that. Here I'm going to put negative 7/2 equals, these are going to cross cancel, leaving me with m. So that is my answer, but before I claim that this is my answer, I'm going to check my work. So notice I just rewrote the equation exactly the way that it is, but instead of an m, I left a space here, so I'm going to go ahead and put in my answer, which was negative 7/2. Here, 7/8 is already simplified, so I'm going to bring it down here. A negative times a negative is a positive. 1 times 7 is 7. 4 times 2 is 8. This is a true statement, so I know my answer is correct. So we're just going to keep moving on to the next example. For number 3, okay, first things first, I'm going to actually want to rewrite this. Okay, this is the same thing as r/2, so r/2 plus 8/2 equals negative 3.5. I'm going to simplify because I noticed 8/2 simplifies to 4, so that's r/2 plus 4 equals negative 3.5. Now I need to get rid of my constant by subtracting 4 from both sides, which leaves me with r/2, this is going to be 0, equals, here, do some side work. I have a negative 4 and a negative 3 5/10. Since they're both negative, I'm going to combine them, which is going to leave me with negative 7 5/10. Now here, in order to get rid of this divided by 2, I'm going to do the inverse, which is to multiply both sides by 2. Oops, I forgot to put that as a negative. 2's cancel each other out, leaving me with r equals, what's double 7.5? That's going to be a negative 15. But once more, you're not done. You're going to have to plug it into the original problem. So notice again, instead of r, I just put parentheses for a spot so I can plug in my answer, but everything else looks identical. Put negative 15 here. Negative 15 plus 8 is a negative 7/2 equals negative 3.5. Well, let's see. Half of negative 7 is negative 3.5. Does negative 3.5 equal negative 3.5? Yes, so I know that my answer is correct. So looking at our next example here, it's a little bit more complex. We have some mixed numbers, but we're going to go about the same steps. So first things first, I'm going to try to isolate my variable. So the first thing I want to do is get rid of my constant. So I'm going to go ahead and subtract 3 3/8 from both sides. Here, I can't do this off the top of my head, so I'm going to go ahead and do some side work. 1 7/8 is equivalent to 15/8. I'm going to subtract 3 and 3/8, which is equivalent to 27/8. Here the denominators are conveniently the same, so it's not much work. 15 minus 27 is -12. Notice here I can reduce by 4, so I'm going to divide by 4, leaving me with -3/2. So I'm going to go ahead and write that as -3/2 equals, converting this into an improper fraction, we're going to get 9/4 x. Now I just need to get rid of my coefficient, and I do that by doing the inverse of multiplication, because this means multiplication. I'm going to go ahead and divide both sides by 9/4. Here I can't do this off the top of my head, so I'm going to rewrite it as -3/2 divided by, plus, divided by 9/4, which is equivalent to -3/2 times 4/9. I can cross cancel. Here it's going to become -1/3. Here divided by 2 becomes 1. This becomes 2, leaving me with -2/3. So here I have -2/3 equals, these cross cancel, leaving me with x. But once more, I need to check my work. So I'm going to go ahead and rewrite the equation. But instead of an x, I put a set of parentheses so I can plug in my answer of -2/3. Before I can check it, I'm going to convert these into improper fractions. So that's 15/8 equals 9/4 times -2/3 plus 27/8. Here we're going to get 15/8 equals, I can cross cancel. This is going to become 1, 3, 2, -1. So it's -3/2 plus 27/8. This is already simplified, so I'm just bringing it straight down. Here, I want a denominator of 8, so I'm going to have to multiply this by 4. So that's going to leave me with -12 plus 27. So my final answer is going to be 15/8 equals, -12 plus 27 is 15/8. So I know my answer is correct. Now, moving on to our 5th example. Here for our next example, I'm hoping that the first thing that you notice is that we're going to have to combine like terms. So I'm going to combine a 4 and 4/10 with a positive 5/10. Notice I'm circling the sign as well. I'm going to do some side work here. I'm going to combine them, making sure I align my decimals up. 4 plus 5 is 9. Bring down the 4. Here I have 4 and 9/10. Plus the 11 and 4/10 are equals -23 and 6/10. I want to get rid of my constant now, so I'm going to go ahead and subtract 4 and 9/10 from both sides. This is going to go away, leaving me with 11 and 4/10 are equals. Here, since they're both the same sign, I'm going to go ahead and combine them, making sure I line up my decimals, which is going to leave me with 28 and 5/10. Last but not least, since this means multiplication, I'm going to do the inverse to get rid of my coefficient, which means I'm going to divide both sides by 11 and 4/10. This becomes 1, leaving me with our equals. I need to figure what this is, so I'm going to go ahead and do some division. We have 28 and 5/10 divided by 11 and 4/10. Before we can do the division, I need to move my decimal over once to the right, so I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing here. This cannot go into 2, cannot go into 28, but can go into 285 about 2 times, which is going to leave me with 228 with a remainder of, let's see, 7, 5, then bring down a 0. And this is going to go into that 5 times exactly. So I'm going to say my answer is, well here, oops, I almost forgot, since these are negative, my answer is going to be negative here. So here, a negative divided by a positive is a negative, so my answer is R equals -2.5. But I'm going to have to check my answer, so I'm going to plug that in here. Notice this equation matches the one here. It's just, instead of an R, I put a set of parentheses so that I know that I'm going to plug in my answer here. So I'm just going to bring this down, 4 and 4/10. Here it's going to be minus because a positive times a negative is a negative. 11 and 4/10 times 2 and 5/10. Well, let's see what that is. It's going to be 28.5. Bringing down the 5/10 equals negative 23 and 6/10. I'm going to go ahead and combine the positives, which is going to leave me with 4 and 9/10 minus 28.5 equals negative 23 and 6/10. When I combine these, I'm going to get negative 23 and 6/10 equals negative 23 and 6/10. That means it's correct. For our next example, here, hopefully your brain tells you that we're going to have to combine like terms first. So let's just go ahead and do that. We're going to distribute 5/4 to 1/3. So showing my work here, 5/4 times 1/3. Can't cross cancel, so it's going to leave me with 5/12. So here we have 5/12 x. Here we're going to distribute to the next term. We have 5/4 times a negative 5/6. Again, I can't cross cancel, so I'm left with negative 25 over 24. So I'm going to write that down. 25 over 24. I'm going to go ahead and just bring down the rest, so plus 1/2 x equals negative 61 over 48. Now here, I'm going to notice I can combine like terms. So I'm going to go ahead and combine a 5/12 x with a positive 1/2 x. Notice I am circling the sign in front so I know whether it's positive or negative. Here, I'm going to go ahead and combine these two together. My lowest common denominator is going to be a 12. So here, I didn't have to change it at all. You're basically multiplying by 1. So your numerator is still 5. Here, you're going to have to multiply by 6. So your new numerator is positive 6, which is going to leave me with 11/12. So here, I'm going to write 11/12 x minus 25 over 24 equals negative 61 over 48. Now what we're going to do is get rid of our constant. So I'm going to have to add 25 over 24 to both sides. Here I'm noticing that I'm going to be left with negative 11 over, whoops, that's not negative, just kidding. It's 11 over 12x. This is going to be 0 equals, here, I don't know what this is off the top of my head, so I'm going to do some more side work. Negative 61 over 48 plus 25 over 24. I need a common denominator. It's going to be 48. Here, you're not going to have to change it because you're just multiplying by 1. So I'm left with negative 61, but here you're going to have to multiply by 2, which is going to be plus 50, which equals negative 11 over 48. So I'm going to go ahead and write that here. Last but not least, but you're going to have to get rid of your coefficient by dividing both sides by 11/12. This is gone, leaving me with just x equals a negative number. Do some more side work. Negative 11/48 divided by 11/12 is the same thing as negative 11/48 times 12 over 11. Notice the 11s cancel each other out. Here, they have 12 in common, so 12 divided by 12 is 1. 48 divided by 12 is 4, leaving me with 1/4. And it is negative, but I already marked it right here. So there I have x equals negative 1/4. Now here, I'm going to have to check my work, so I'm going to go ahead and erase all of this because I'm not going to have enough space. You don't want to do this on your actual work, but for my case, I'm going to have to so that you can see. I'm going to rewrite everything exactly the way that it is. So 5/4 times the quantity 1/3, but instead of an x, I'm going to go ahead and put a set of parentheses here. Minus 5/6 plus 1/2, another set of parentheses, equals negative 61 over 48. So what goes in the parentheses? I'm going to put a negative 1/4, both here. So here I'm going to have to do order of operations, so I'm going to have to simplify what I have in here. So I'm going to be left with 5/4 times the quantity. This is going to be a negative 1/12 minus 5/6. Right here it's going to be a minus 1/8 equals negative 61 over 48. I'm going to continue order of operations. I'm going to simplify what's in the parentheses first. I'm going to get a, sorry, just getting ahead of myself. Here I'm going to bring down the 5/4. I'm going to combine these here to get a denominator of 12. I'm going to have to multiply this by 2, which is going to give me -1 minus 10, which is -11, minus 1/8, oops, let's change that color back, minus 1/8 equals -61 over 48. Here I'm going to now see if I can cross cancel. I can't, so I'm left with -55 over 48 minus 1/8 equals -61 over 48. Here, to get a common denominator of 48, I'm going to have to multiply the second fraction by 6. So -56 minus 6 is going to be a -61. Does that equal my -61 over 48? Yes, so I know my answer is correct. So let's just keep moving forward. Here, first things first, hopefully you see and recognize that we're going to have to distribute. So here off on my side work, I'm going to show that I'm multiplying 6 3/10 by 3 1/10. Just to save myself some time, I'm going to go ahead and put this into a calculator. Of course, you're going to have to do it by hand. And that's going to get me, let's see, 6 3/10 times 3 1/10 is going to give me 19 53/100. So here it's a negative, by the way, because a positive times a negative is a negative. Then I'm going to distribute one more time to the 4 1/10. So 6 3/10 times 4 1/10. Real quick, I noticed it's going to be negative, so I'm going to mark that right away. Again, I'm going to punch it into a calculator just so that it's quicker for me. You, on the other hand, you're going to have to actually punch into a calculator. So this is going to give me 25 83/100. So I'm going to write that in. Make sure you don't forget your variable b. Bring this down. Now, first things first, let's get rid of our constant. Let's add to both sides. This is going to be 0, leaving me with just -25 83/100 b equals, again, I'm going to go ahead and punch this into a calculator real quick. Let's put that in, 19 53/100 plus 8 883 thousandths. Please make sure you line up your decimals for this. It's going to give me 28 413 thousandths. Last but not least, you're going to have to divide both by your coefficient, which means you're dividing by 25 83/100. This is going to turn into 1. 1 times b is just b. Here, you're going to actually have to divide this out. 28 413 thousandths divided by 25 83/100. Again, just to save myself some time, I'm going to go ahead and punch that into a calculator. That's going to give me 1.1. So I'm not done yet because I need to still check my answer. Notice I rewrote this exactly the way that it is, except for a b. I went ahead and put a set of parentheses. So here I'm going to put 1.1. According to order of operations, I'm going to have to do what's inside the parentheses first. So therefore, since there's parentheses within parentheses, I'm going to do this first. So I just brought this down. 4 1/10 times 1 1/10 is going to give me a positive 4 51/100. Just bringing the rest down. Now here I can go ahead and combine that. So I'm just bringing down the -6 3/10. 3 1/10 plus the 4 51/100 is 7 61/100. Okay. So already I'm noticing if I multiply this, my answer is going to be negative. So I made a big boo-boo. Where? Can you find it? Hopefully you notice it's right here. Positive divided by negative is a negative. So this should be negative. Therefore, this should be negative. So this is incorrect. Instead of 7 61/100, instead it should be, let's see, 3 1/10 minus 4 51/100 is going to be a negative 1 41/100. Multiply that by my -6 3/10. and I end up with negative 8 and 880, sorry, positive. Negative times negative is a positive, equals 8 and 883 thousandths. So it checks out. So last but not least, let's just go ahead and move on to the very last problem, which is going to be number 8. Okay, so here I'm noticing that I can combine like terms. So let's do that. Do some side work. Here we have negative 5 halves plus 3 halves. What's nice is we already have common denominator, so negative 5 plus 3 is negative 2. Negative 2 over 2 becomes a negative 1, so this is going to become negative x plus 2/3 equals 7/6. Last but not least, let's get rid of our constant from both sides, leaving me with negative x. This becomes 0 equals, here I'm going to have to do some side work, 7/6 minus 2/3. My lowest common denominator is going to be a 6, so I'm going to have to multiply this by 1. So that's going to keep it a 7. Multiply this by 2, which is going to make this a negative 4, which leaves me with 2 over 6. Whoops, not 2 over 6, just kidding. 3 over 6, which reduces to 1/2. However, we're not done. We have a negative to get rid of. So if I divide both by a negative 1, okay, this is going to become x equals positive divided by negative is a negative. However, I'm not done. I need to plug it into my work. Whoops. Here. So I'm just going to go ahead and rewrite this problem. It's negative 5 halves. Instead of x, I'm going to put parentheses plus 2/3 plus 3 halves parentheses for x equals 7/6. Here, instead of the x, I'm replacing it with the negative 1/2 that I got as an answer. So it's going to leave me with a positive 5 over 4 here, plus 2/3. Here you're going to have to multiply that, which gives you a negative 3/4 equals 7/6. Here, because I can, I'm going to go ahead and use a commutative property and combine these two first, which is going to leave me with 2/4, which reduces to 1/2, plus 2/3 equals 7/6. Here, my lowest common denominator is going to be a 6, so I'm going to multiply by 3 here, leaving me with 3. Multiply by 2 here, leaving me with plus 4 equals 7/6. Guess what? I'm running out of space, so I'm just going to write it right here. I'm left with 7/6 equals 7/6, so that means my answer is correct. So hopefully you paid attention to how I showed my work and also how I checked my work. So please make sure you're doing it correctly. If you have any questions, feel free to email me, and I will try my best to respond to you as soon as possible. Again, thank you for tuning in. Until next time, bye.